Hey Global Village, what's up? Okay, this is awkward. Um, I went ahead and, as I said I would, started listening to the subsequent lessons in Professor Predictive History's channel, and boy oh boy, did I get a rude awakening. I, I genuinely feel quite embarrassed. Uh, Referring back to some of my old videos, I have offered a little bit of criticism of this channel, but I've always tried to be very respectful and cautiously optimistic, because I thought, based on the content I had listened to previously, there was no indication that I was going to get what I actually got. Uh, I feel like this is a classic case of bait and switch. Um, I think I'm more than justified to call what he's doing a kind of cult. A sort of mini Scientology, actually. And I will not be wasting any more time on this channel, and this will be the last video I ever make about him. I have to make it because I have to set the record straight. Because if I don't make it, I'm kind of ultimately going to humiliate myself by not doing so, because he is not what he kind of... This is not what was on the cover. Before I actually play his content, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right from the beginning of his next lesson. And by the way, I sometimes am quite insomniatic, and last night I decided I would just listen to his lectures, and it was actually so bad that I had to intermittently pause it, because it was driving me mad listening to so much bullshit. I have a low tolerance for bullshit, and it certainly isn't going to work for the type of thing that's going to put you to sleep, because it was making me so angry that I actually couldn't sleep. But I did soldier my way through this lesson, but oh my god, it is just awful from beginning to end. And like I said, I'm quite embarrassed that I ever took him seriously at all. I think before I play some of his content, and I'm actually just going to pause it intermittently and just offer some straight up critique. I think that's the best way to do it, which I think comes under fair use. And it's not like they could demonetize me if I got because I don't monetize my channel anyway. What I'm going to do is, and I'm doing this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, let's hear what Google's Gemini has to say about game theory. So I'm just going to jump into here, and we're going to just hear what it has to say.
Game theory is the mathematical study of strategic interaction between rational decision makers, analyzing situations where outcomes depend on the choices of multiple players, like in chess, business, or politics. It uses models to understand conflict and cooperation, focusing on players, strategies, and payoffs to predict optimal decisions, exemplified by concepts like Nash equilibrium, where no player benefits from unilaterally changing their strategy. Developed by von Neumann and Morgan Stern, it provides tools for fields from economics and biology to law and psychology.
Right, so we get the picture. Notice that it didn't say anything about religion or pseudo-religious nonsense. I think that's very relevant to what we're about to hear. Now, I also want to point out that he clearly despises AI, and I think there's good reason to be critical of AI and how it's being used, and even the early evidence of how it is affecting people's brains, and most especially young people who are growing up using ChatGPT to answer all their questions. These are serious problems that we need to get on top of ASAP. However, his particular contempt of AI lacks all nuance. And in his rejection of AI, without really even engaging in a compelling argument other than to claim that AI lies. I mean, AI doesn't lie. That is us anthropomorphizing artificial intelligence. What it does is it simply gets shit wrong. And it gets it wrong because it's trained on a lot of bad data. Because humans do lie and humans do say nonsense, and they say it on the internet. So you train it on potentially malicious or uninformed information, then of course it's going to regurgitate that information back, and it is going to be incorrect. It's not technically lying, it's just inherently unreliable. Anyway, the other thing I will say is that you will notice that actually here I have Yahoo, because I want to just point out that I often use Yahoo search rather than Google search, because indeed Google search, as we go back to here, brings up by default at the top of everything else an AI overview. There are many cases where, depending on what it is you're looking for, YouTube just is a superior search engine, which is insane, but it's just a testament to the fact that Google has become such a steaming pile of shit that it's just not giving you useful information anymore. It's just giving you sponsored, paid-for advertisers and prioritizing people that give them a lot of money over actually valuable information. And of course, force-feeding us AI now, because I don't engage in AI proactively, other than to simply, by running a Google search, I'm just gonna get by default Google's AI, which I believe is called Gemini. And so the other thing I want to mention is that if you listen to YouTube, you should do so not in Google's Chrome, but in Brave browser, or maybe some other similar browser that prioritizes privacy and cuts away a lot of the needless spam advertising, including the advertising that you get blasted with in YouTube. Highly recommended. And speaking of advertising, I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, a website called doyourownresearch.com. And it is powered by Clever Dick Technologies, which is a new and sophisticated AI engine that is revolutionizing the way we educate and learn about the world around us. Now, here's an example. Suppose you are an anti-vaxxer, and suppose you encounter these smart alecks who are very knowledgeable and informed in the fields of, let's say, virology and epidemiology. Now, this puts you at a distinct disadvantage because, unlike you, these people know what the fuck they're talking about. So in order to solve that, you can use, and you'll get a week's free trial if you enter in the code bullshit in-stream advertising, and then just be aware that at the end of that week it will roll over into a mandatory 12-month paid contract, and in order to actually cancel that contract you will have to click on an invisible link hidden at the very bottom of the terms and conditions. But all that aside, if you actually sign up to this website using my promotion code, you can, in one single lesson, learn all of the major talking points and rebuttals to even the smartest PhD student or graduate. Even if they're a postdoc, even if they have tenure, I'm telling you, this system will teach you every fallacious method and technique for debating them down and defending your nonsensical, emotive-fueled bullshit theory about how vaccines cause autism, for example, and you'll be able to dispose of these people easily. So anyway, getting back to the actual subject at hand, let's go ahead and take a listen to what this guy has to say, even though it's going to hurt my ears to do it. Let's go.
What is a great book? What I want to show you in this class is that a great book is something that makes you fully human by revealing to you the secrets of the universe and the secrets of what it means to be human. Now, in school, you've been taught that a person comes from evolution, right? We evolved from monkeys. 99% of our DNA is that of a chimpanzee. And you're taught that the world is primarily materialistic. The world is what you can see, what you can observe, what you can measure, and that's it. And this is the great lie, the great deception that we teach you in school.
Oh my God, what just happened? Apparently, school is the great lie, everyone, because it teaches us a materialistic understanding of the world. It's generally focused on empirical information, and that is the great lie. I think we need to take a little bit of context here, because this guy actually teaches in China. And what do we know about China? Well, it turns out that China is very secular, far more secular than America, and even significantly more secular than most European countries as well. In fact, I think it's probably fair to say that the CCP sees organised religion as a genuine potential threat to its continued governance. So it stands to reason that large monolithic religions in China just isn't really promoted. It's not a thing. And I personally don't regard that as necessarily a bad thing at all. But it turns out this gentleman does, and let's find out why.
And we know it's a lie, it's a deception, because everything that you've been taught in school, everything that you've learned here, that you will learn in university, in graduate school, in science, in life, does not answer a fundamental question. What is consciousness?
I would like to point out that that actually isn't true. Whilst you're not going to learn about far more esoteric and literally one of the hardest questions known to humankind, which is consciousness, you are actually there is plenty of academic research into the field of consciousness. And indeed, I have talked about consciousness on this very channel, including discussing the theories of people like Michael Graziano, who is an academic working in university and owning his own research company, where he is, engaged in the subject of exactly what is consciousness and how do we define it. What are the attributes of consciousness? So what he's saying here is simply not even true. The premise itself is false. You're certainly not going to learn it in the early days of your education, because you're learning all the fundamental building blocks like, numeracy and literacy. So anyway, I'm challenging his assertion there.
Why do we see the world the way it is? How do we think? How do we have ideas? How do we communicate? You're not allowed to ask this question. And therefore, you're not allowed to ask the question, what does it mean to be human?
Again, what a straw man. You're not allowed to ask this question? Exactly where did that come from? You are absolutely allowed to ask this question. In fact, you can go and ask ChatGPT this question, which of course is a tool that he hates, but which is readily available to pretty much everyone across the face of the planet. And ChatGPT will give it its best current answer to that question based on its training material. And of course, you can from there go and actually research people like Michael Graziano and everything he has to say on the subject, which is lots. So you can ask the question. So his follow-on proposition that you therefore can't ask what it means to be human is also fallacious. I hope you see what he's doing here. This is just sloppy nonsense.
What is human? Okay? And I will show you in this class that there are two aspects of being human. There is, of course, the material aspect. You have a body, but you also have a soul. Okay? You also have a soul.
Whoa. You have a soul. That is an axiom that he's presenting to us. I would like him to provide empirical evidence on that. Oh, but wait a minute. He's already said that traditional education is about the material world, about empirically measurable things, which is exactly his criticism of it. So, he has a circular defense there, that he doesn't need to provide material evidence of a soul, because that's the type of nonsense that the traditional education system deals in, which is exactly what he's trying to wake you up from. Now, I want to be clear here. There's nothing wrong with believing you have a soul, but to just straight out come and assert you have a soul is entering into the territory of pseudoscience nonsense. And boy, he doesn't just dip his toes into it. He goes neck deep. A question I would ask of him is, if humans have a soul, do animals have a soul? Because, I've had several truly beloved pets in my life. And when I look at these animals and I observe their behavior, I'm not so sure that at the end of the day, these animals are somehow qualitatively less than human, other than they just don't possess our level of intellect and reasoning. If he said, I'm willing to bet that he would probably say animals don't have souls. And I think that would just further discredit him in my eyes, because I think that is an example of classic human arrogance and hubris. Do we have souls? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. I think, and I like to think, that there may be, in some metaphorical sense, we have souls. I think our consciousness can be metaphorically described as being the essence of a soul, but in terms of any supernatural definition, like, is there actually a soul, then I would say this is not something we can really say yes there is or no there isn't. And certainly I don't think it's by mistake or coincidence that religions tend to very much believe in the existence of a soul, despite the fact they have not a dot of actual evidence of their existence. It's just part of the dogma of religion. Again, I'm not trying to be religious here at all. Although I have made a video in the past expressing my particular experience of religion growing up, and being someone who's lived in a largely secular environment, what my thoughts about religion are and how it's impacted my life. Anyway, let's go. Let's continue.
That connects you to the spiritual or to the divine. Okay? And that's who you are. And the spiritual and divine, there's a spark inside of you that comes from God. And this spark is what allows you to love and to imagine.
Okay, I thought we were here to learn game theory. I didn't think I was here to receive a lesson about his personal religious beliefs, which is all this is. Now, I'm calling this channel a cult because that is what it is. He possesses a certain charisma. Back in the early days when I watched a few of his other videos, I was intrigued. I was intrigued by the sense of this was someone who truly believed in what he was teaching. He talked about game theory and how he wanted to share this with the world because it's going to help you understand the things that are happening in the world. And I would have to, in good faith, I would have to think that yes, it is another way of understanding why people do what they do. Now, does that mean game theory is the be-all and end-all? I'm going to just go back to his first lesson, which was also a little bit problematic, but generally by the end of it, I was still feeling quite enthusiastic about seeing what he had in store for us. He did go through the basic fundamentals of what game theory is, in as much as he said, you have the player, you have the rules and the limits, the playing field, and you have the incentives. Now, he didn't actually say this, but by incentives, I assume he means both positive and negative motivations for why and how you play the game. He actually then went on and talked about a simple hypothetical, which I found interesting but ultimately quite problematic. And I'm going to be much more open now about my criticisms of it, given how the big reveal that he's done in this particular lesson. But he used a simple example of a small group of men and a small group of women, and then he talked about attractiveness and scaled it on a rating of 5 to 1, with 5 being the most attractive, 1 being the least attractive, and how the males and females would classify themselves into those groups, and then he would talk about how they would choose their partner. And of course he pointed out that men have a very different agenda and goal than women do. And part of this can be explained by biology, because women, they're the ones that actually get pregnant, that have to actually incubate the child for 9 months, and then often end up being the primary caregiver for the next 17 to 20 odd years. All of this was pretty reasonable stuff. He then kind of talked about, for example, there's this idea of equilibrium, and I cannot remember the exact formal term he used, whereby, for example, number 5 would match with number 5, 4 with 4, 3 with 3, 2 with 2, 1 with 1. And there would therefore just be a natural equilibrium. Everyone would find a partner, and they would all be able to procreate, and everyone wins. But then he said in the real world, of course, that doesn't happen because people don't behave rationally, etc. Like number 5 is a player, the male number 5 is a player, and he wants to sleep with all the women, and the woman realised that number 5 is a player, and so the number 5 woman, for example, rejects number 5 and goes for, I don't know, number 4 or number 3, and maybe number 4 and 3 fight over number 5. Because they're both trying to improve their station in the world and trying to go for someone of a higher status and attractiveness than themselves, blah, 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 and it turns into this just horrific mess. He then kind of transitioned into, he didn't actually resolve that particular scenario. He then actually just transitioned into what he called superstructures, which is like groups of, human society and how those societies are structured. And he presented 3 examples, and I can actually only remember 2 of them. The first one is the one where you've got like arranged marriages, and basically the whole idea here is just for people to procreate, and mutual attraction really is of little real importance. It's like people just pair people off based on who the parents decide is the appropriate partner, and you don't get much decision in the matter, but you do end up with a society with a positive birth rate. He then talked about a middle-of-the-road society, and I can't remember the exact scenario he went over, but he then talked about the end game, the final society, which he's talking about many modern Western societies at that stage now. And not just Western, but just, for example, China as well, he used as a classic example, whereby the birth rates have become catastrophically low in his view, and that these societies are going to imminently collapse over the next 50 years to century. Now, I don't have strong arguments against what he's saying, although I would say that I think it is actually hyperbolic to say these societies will collapse. I think what is actually going to happen is that they're going to go through a very difficult transition where that society's demographic is going to have far more old people than it does young people. But this is a temporary situation in terms of the great scheme of things, because people live short lives. We're only around at best for 100 years, and that's only if things go particularly well. A lot of us are going to live far shorter lives than that. So what's actually going to happen is the older generation is going to die off, and it is going to self-correct. So we can talk about specific points in time where there's going to be demographic imbalance. And as he himself said, societies can address that by changing their immigration rules and bringing in people from countries where they have a population surplus. So, for example, despite the fact that America is at the moment shooting itself in the foot and sending ICE agents around to terrorize people, to as it turns out, straight up murder civilians on the streets now. Despite what America is doing, might come a crisis point where they realise they need to welcome immigrants into their country because of population demographics. Anyway, he said all that stuff, and by the end of his video, I was like, cool, now let's get into the juicy stuff, and then we get this steaming pile of shit. I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it that. Look, actually, when I listened to his video, I came away from it feeling very, very concerned. This was so problematic, because like any good cult leader, a lot of what he was saying was very true. And there were a lot of important things he was saying that I actually strongly agree with. But he's mixing it in with a whole lot of pseudoscience bullshit. very, very similar to something like Scientology, for example, which is just this weird blend of the scientific beliefs and just some, basic common sense, along with some unbelievable nonsense. And ultimately, it is a cult of personality, and I just think we're looking at the Mr. Cult of personality right here. I mean, with Scientology, for example, they have this belief that people over medicate in modern Western society, and that they sure as hell do. I agree with that entirely. The problem is they take it to the extreme, and they, for example, deny women medication during the process of childbirth, which is pretty outrageous. My understanding is there are a few things that a human can experience that are potentially more painful than childbirth. So for a male to think he has the right to tell a female that she is not to take pain medication during the process of childbirth when she's suffering extreme pain is quite outrageous. And of course, they extend that to, people not taking medication due to certain psychological issues, which I think they're stepping outside of their expertise and just adhering to a basic belief that medication is just fundamentally bad and that you should try and avoid it at all costs. Anyway, I digress. I don't know how much more of this I can tolerate, but we'll kick on.
So being a human means to engage in two fundamental acts. The act of love, of loving someone, which allows you to unify with God. And the act of imagination, to expand your consciousness, which allows you to be God itself. Okay?
So he's now unifying love and God. So if you want access to love, you need to embrace God. I hope you see what he's doing here. He's creating another false dichotomy, really. According to what he's saying, it would be impossible for an atheist to know true love or to embrace a true and full definition of love because they reject the notion of God. Where's the evidence and proof that that's actually the case? I mean, I certainly don't argue the reciprocal. I'm not trying to argue that you can't know love if you are religious, or you can't know love through your faith and believe in God. I would never try to say that. Yet he's implicitly claiming the corollary. Anyway.
Love is the unifying force of the universe, the God force. The imagination is the animating force of the universe. And this is the great secret of the universe. The universe is not material, it is conscious. It is conscious itself. Okay? So this is a really...
They have a name for that. It's called panpsychism. And it is sort of a fringe philosophical position. So, he's running the gamut of some science, some philosophy. He mentions Immanuel Kant several times. Religion, and of course then his big unifying concept apparently is then game theory, which he lavishes on top of this. But this man is not fit to be teaching game theory. I think there's got to be better sources, probably some books. Not this.
Really hard concept to understand, okay? So let's work through it slowly. Okay, so we have Immanuel Kant, and we'll read Immanuel Kant later on, okay? And he's trying to figure out what reality is. How do we perceive reality? And his solution is this. He believes that the world is divided into reality itself called the nomana. Nomana just means the things in themselves, the objective reality. And then there is the phenomena. And what we do basically is that we perceive or we engage with the nomana and we translate it into the phenomena. The things in themselves become the things to us, the things that appear to us. And
what he's teaching there is just basically verbatim what Immanuel Kant teaches. So there's nothing at all wrong with anything he's saying here. But like I said, he's blending all sorts of stuff together based on his own particular worldview, and then he's just layered game theory on top of it. Now, the reason I'm kind of persisting here is later on in his video, and I think I'm going to call it here, but I'm going to just tell you what he said later on, which was what felt so troublesome to me. And it was not because what he was saying was wrong, but because it was actually quite true, and in as much as it was true, it was deeply alluring. In the same way that, some stuff in Scientology is, certain aspects of Scientology are true and therefore alluring, but it's a trap. And in this case, he talks about how society teaches us to value material things, and so that we pursue almost mindlessly material wealth, possessions, and that this is what we think we need to do in order to be a valued human being in society. Now, I figured out for myself a long time ago that was bullshit, that society had sold us the dummy, and this is not a useful way to value your own humanity or the humanity of other people. It certainly didn't require me to develop a cult and a pseudo-scientific belief system in order to reject the materialistic notion of modern society. Nonetheless, he talked about this, and he was very evangelical, and he was talking about this in response to a question one of his students was asking him. And again, this is what worried me, because he's teaching young minds, he's teaching young people these ideas, and capturing them when they're much more open and vulnerable to a lot of his pseudoscience nonsense, because he's blending it in with a lot of very alluring stuff. I mean, to be informed while you're still young that the whole idea that society is teaching us things that are just not actually true, that it's teaching us value systems that ultimately won't serve us if we want to become fully realized human beings that are capable of leveraging and using our own brains freely, is very powerful. For someone to be told that while they're still young enough to hear this information can make them a lifelong heretic and against the orthodoxy of the time. And this is both good and bad. It's good because it allows you not to just accept mindlessly the ideas of orthodox social values, but it's bad when it's coming from a person who is spinning what I hope have demonstrated here is pretty obvious nonsense. I don't know how harmful some of the stuff he's teaching is. It may be less harmful than just any other normal traditional religion. I haven't seen any clear evidence that it's being wielded in a way that is malicious. So I don't know that, but I'm going to stand by the fact that there are certainly a lot of cult-like elements here, and I, for one, am not wasting another second of my time with this channel, and I feel quite embarrassed that I took me this long to actually find out what the hell was really going on. Alright, that's it. That's all I've got to say on the matter. Bendy out.